Welcome to episode 258 of the Whatnauts review show. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you on this weekend? It's Father's Day weekend. It's Pride Month. It's Juneteenth. There's all sorts of stuff happening.
Lots of stuff's happening.
Indeed.
It's a busy time.
Up with you? Yeah.
I just run a lot of errands. I run a lot of errands. I go to a lot of movies.
Do what you got to do, right? That's just getting stuff done. What's the next movie for you to go see? What's the next one that you're checking out?
This weekend, I checked out The Flash, and then I saw a showing of There Will Be Blood, which was nice to get to see in a theater because I missed that when I was like 17 when it first came out. Next weekend, I think, is Past Lives and Asteroid City.
Ooh, yeah, Asteroid City. I'm excited about that one.
I went to the Alamo Draft House, and they replaced every poster slot with just Asteroid City.
That's awesome. I'm still trying to get to the new Disney and Pixar movie. Haven't made plans yet to go do that, but that's also one on my list that I would like to check out. But yeah, this weekend has been good. I can't say I've really done too much. I set some new things up here in OBS. That's the intro video that we do at the start of our things that played right at the start. That was in the stream, which is neat. So we're testing it out to see how it works and stuff like that. That's what I've been up to. But you guys did not know, here on the Whatnauts review show, each week we have a different story to talk about. Could be a movie, a TV show, anime, manga, comic book, all sorts of stuff. We read it and watch it and come back here and talk about it. This week on the show, we're here to talk about The Watermelon Woman. It's interesting because we came to this movie based on a recommendation from a character in season 2 of Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, a fictional person recommended this to us. We both really enjoy. We love the Yellow Jackets. We love them. We watched season 2, and season 2 involves a queer woman who does run a VHS only rental store in modern times, full of 90s nostalgia and some queer focused films. And I thought it would be fun as that season of that show had just ended, and it also happened to end right in time for Pride Month. Let's find 3 of those movies that are highlighted in her video store, and let's pick one of those 3 for a topic this week. And we went with the one that in dialogue she personally recommends to a customer in one scene in the show, which is The Watermelon Woman.
Yeah. Well, I think originally the idea was let's pick 3 of the queer-centric movies for Pride Month that are in there. And I looked on Reddit, all that stuff, to be like, what are the movies highlighted in Van's Shop in Yellow Jackets season 2? And it was not as queer as we were expecting. But front and center was The Watermelon Woman. There is a small snippet of a scene where she personally recommends this one to someone else in the shop. And so I put that one on my list of things to pitch. And then I ended up finding a couple of other just queer centric movies from the 90s to put on that list. But because the original idea was what about the ones from Van's Shop? This is the one we went with here. So we got to watch The Watermelon Woman, which is a movie I had never heard of before this. I think on partly being pasty McPale white guy, partly growing up thinking I'm straight, right? Just it never even came onto my radar. So this was an interesting watch for me for sure, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I knew this movie by name. I think I had scrolled past it in streaming platforms before, and I never knew what it was. I never knew what the title referred to. So I was happy to answer that small mystery of my life. What is The Watermelon Woman? which is the central question of the movie itself. Who was she?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
also want to mention, I think another reason why I had this name in my head, when I Googled this movie to learn a little bit more about it, it is coming to the Criterion Collection in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Available July 11th of this year. I probably read it in like a Criterion newsletter. A very nice collection of The Watermelon Woman. I'm really digging this cover art.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's when did this come out? It's 1996, so it's almost about to have its like 30-year anniversary. And I think for its 20th, they did like a restoration of the film. Just a little bit of background on the film here. It was directed and written by Cheryl Donier. She is also the main character in the film. It is the first feature film directed by a Black lesbian and is considered a landmark in new queer cinema. I'm just writing straight off the Wikipedia page. In 2021, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. So yeah, we were excited to dive into this one for sure. The whole plot is Cheryl has decided to make a video project. I don't remember. Was she still in school? Is she doing it as like a school thing? No,
just a personal project. She aspires to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, and she takes up this project where she's trying to figure out who the Watermelon Woman is. She saw this movie from like the 1930s, and there was an actress in there, a Black woman, who was playing one of those stereotypical mammy roles, and just something about her presence on screen really spoke to her. And that was the thing, is she was really kind of only credited as the Watermelon Woman. And so she was like, this is it. This is my movie. I need to investigate who she is and find out about her life. She ends up finding some info on who she is and what her life was like, and then makes this small like documentary film. I say that hesitantly because this film does a weird like meta thing where parts of it are filmed on like a handy cam kind of thing, little cam quarter that you would see in the 90s. And then there are certain scenes that have that much more like, oh no, this is a movie that you are watching here. And it kind of goes back and forth between those two. And so it's this weird kind of like, is the movie that I'm watching the movie that Cheryl, the character, made?
Yeah.
Or is this the one that Cheryl, the director and writer of this made? So it's an interesting combination there that I really liked and was not expecting at all. I thought this was mostly gonna be like her in the video store, and like more so kind of a slice of life, like in the store, more like Clerks, if I'm being honest, which just kind of reminded me of in those small bits that were in the video store. But yeah, I had a blast with this.
Yeah, this is fun. It's fairly breezy. It's very conversational, very casual, and feels very grounded and personal. I did really appreciate that I got to have a look into somebody's life at a specific time in a specific place that I didn't know very much about.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, same here with me. Like, I don't know that experience. And I think here on the review show, I'm always like looking for new genres we haven't really covered, or every once in a while trying to be like, here's some movies maybe we could cover that is like film education 101, and I think we kind of stumbled into one here, and I'm super excited that we did. Yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot. I'm trying to think of any other kind of like spoiler free stuff that I want to say about this. Do you have any other kind of thoughts that you want to add on?
I just want to tell the audience members that it is a very short film. It's like 86 minutes long. I watched it through Showtime on Paramount Plus, and in that transfer, it included the restoration credits at the beginning of the movie, which I appreciated. I think this is also on Showtime through Hulu or Showtime directly,
However,
and it might have also been on
Showtime, yeah.
Yeah, it might have also been on Max. We're early enough in the month. You know, by the time this releases, you've got like another like 10 days of Pride Month. So like go to the Pride section of your streaming platform, look around, go to your local library.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of ways you can find to watch The Watermelon Woman, and it is a nice watch. I am happy I saw this.
As a wise aardvark once said, having fun's not hard when you've got a library card.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Yeah, so I say we take a quick break for housekeeping, and then when we come back, we can dive into this movie and start discussing it a little bit more in depth. So we will be right back. Here at the Whatnauts, we make multiple different shows, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. If you enjoy our shows, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to show your support. For just $1 a month, you can get early access to episodes, and at our $3 tier, a Patreon-exclusive podcast, The Pilots Club. You can even get a shout out and thank you on most of our shows at the $5 tier. And if you're one of our patrons already, thank you so much, it means the world to us. You can find out more information on our website, thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in The Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch for video versions of the shows, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, we have merch. If you want to grab yourself a shirt or a hoodie or a mug or something else, head over to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. All right, we are back. Big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We love you a lot. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cool things that we've been up to. If you are at the $3 tier on Patreon, you get access to the Pilots Club. This month, we got to talk about the pilot of Cheers. Went all the way back to that show. Had a good time talking about that one. It holds up a lot more than I was expecting. I had never seen it before, so I really didn't know what to expect. But I was like, wow, I'm into this. This is good. And then coming up this next month on the Pilots Club, we are checking out the pilot of a Netflix show called Cable Girls. It's a Spanish show. It's a period piece set. I keep forgetting if it's in like World War II or like right around that area. But it's about these women that go to work for a telecommunications company. They're working the like operator switchboards there, and they all have their own different reasons for being there. And I keep saying one might be a single mom, one might be a spy. Who knows? We'll have to see here.
The two kinds of women.
But yeah, so keep an eye out for that stuff. Right here on the review show, last week we got to talk about Clone High Season 1, the animated series that was on MTV back in the day, created by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who you guys might know from being the creators of Into and Across the Spider-Verse. So we went back and checked out a cartoon they had made in the early 2000s, which also has a brand new like revival, like kind of season 2 / revival of that show happening right now on HBO Max, just Max. So that was interesting to go check out. I mentioned Across the Spider-Verse. We have a big spoiler cast on that if you're interested. We also just went to go see The Flash. And so we have a spoiler cast on that will be out by time this goes public for everyone. But yeah, over on the Captain's Log, last but not least, we got to have a draft, a fantasy draft of dads in honor of Father's Day. We got to choose not new dads to replace the one we had, but like we built our team of these would all be good dads.
Yes, these are our additional bonus dads.
Picks. Yeah, we had a lot of fun,
they all
with that.
They all have to dad together along with your own original dad. So we're forming a team of 6 dads each.
Super dad team. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, that's a bunch of the stuff that we've been up to here at the Whatnauts. So yeah, without further ado, I say we get into spoilers on the Watermelon Woman. Bam, here we are. Spoilers for the Watermelon Woman. Melissa, where do you want to start with this? I feel like there's so many interesting places to start. So I made a comparison. Here's where we'll start at the start of this when I was explaining things, and I compared it to Clerks, and I feel even mentioning that almost right off the bat, this film and Clerks are also very different films.
Right.
Like almost like it's a weird comparison to make, but like. It was one of the touchstones I had, and I'm not even like a huge Kevin Smith fan, but it's the idea that like they're clerks in a store. That's kind of the only thing about that. Like I don't want to be like it's Clerks for lesbians. It's not that. It's really not that.
It just is another independent movie from the 90s about people in a service position. I understand the comparison point. Yes.
Yeah. But like on one hand, I really enjoyed those scenes where it did feel a little bit more like that, because again, it was a different perspective. It was a different version of kind of that same thing, right? In Clerks, obviously, it's like the 2 hyper straight white guys, and it's like, am I 36? No, you were 37. You sucked 37 dicks before mine. They have that whole conversation in Clerks. It is like the antithesis of this film here, which in an interesting way, I almost want to say does not focus on the sexuality in this film, but it absolutely does. I think in a much more nuanced way. Right, because the whole premise of that she has a project. She has a goal to complete. Where Clerks doesn't really. They just show up and talk. And that's kind of it. And so yeah, their conversations go into some weird places. But in the Watermelon Woman, there is obviously a connection, like right away when Cheryl is putting the tapes back up, and I don't remember the other woman's name. I'm always terrible with names here.
Tamara, her coworker, or
not the coworker, the one she ends up dating.
Diana,
yes. When Diana is there, like there's very immediately like this physical attraction right there, and obviously they end up having sex. But like I felt it's. And again, like I don't necessarily want to put down Clerks, but Clerks in a weird way compared to this feels like childish in a way that like sexuality is dealt with in that, whereas this is a much more mature take on that, I feel like. So it's almost night and day. I feel weird comparing those two films it's just that was like one of the touchstones that was like, oh, so this is kind of like Clerks. Oh no, it's not.
It's you have the reference points that you have, and that's one of the goals of the show is to expand our horizons of reference points. Yeah, to learn about new things and movies we've never heard of.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to watch this. Absolutely, this was fun.
I feel very out of my depth talking about it as a white straight woman who doesn't know a lot about Black history or queer history. I've never been to Philadelphia. There's a lot of things
I've been there.
What did you enjoy in Philadelphia?
Philly. I mean, it's a great city to walk around in. I was there for like a 4th of July party.
I bet they do it up good.
Oh, they did. I got to see, it was like John Legend was there. The Roots were there performing. I mean, Philly staples, right?
Cool.
They were there. It was a free concert just out in the park.
Nice.
I've been to the art museum with that has the big old Rocky statue, which they've moved the statue now. I think it's somewhere else. It's not at the top of the steps. It's like off on the side now, I think, which I feel like kind of defeats the purpose, but whatever.
Well, then you get to be him. You know, then when you take your photo, you don't look diminished next to a giant statue of Sylvester Stallone. This is there to make you feel better.
Exactly. I think they have great food. I mean, there's always the kind of generic things you can say, like, go get the cheesesteaks, go get one from the authentic. Like,
love
go
a cheesesteak.
Find someone who lives there and is like, where's the best cheesesteak there? Because you just go to any kind of Joe Schmo shop, it might not be the best. But yeah, it's fun. It's a good city. I liked it there a lot.
Nice.
That was I think that was one of the places I applied to for college. One of the art schools up there. I know I did definitely applied to Pittsburgh, which is a ways away. But still, yeah.
That is something I liked about this movie, that it had a specific location it was tied to. We spent a lot of time around Philadelphia. There are Black theaters that existed in like the 20s and 30s and 40s in Philadelphia that are major landmarks that Cheryl discovers and goes and tries to film. Even just hearing the Philadelphia accent and saying "watermelon woman" is nice.
It was interesting. Before we got on this podcast, I watched a little interview of Cheryl to figure out how to say her last name. Because I was like, I wasn't sure if it was Dune. Like, is that like, how do you pronounce that Y in the end of her name? And it's Donye. But she was also talking about the location and like some of her decisions in making the film, and she was talking about just the rich history that Philly has, and that's why it was such an interesting place to film there. That it was a destination for Black people, for slaves that had just been freed to go up north. Like, this was a hot spot. For them to go, and that the city had done a pretty good job of like memorializing that history, to be like, hey, this house here was part of the Underground Railroad, or this house here belonged to a famous Black person who was important in the community. And I think that is partly why they wanted to set the movie there. I don't know if Cheryl was necessarily from there or not, but that is why they chose that location, that rich history and connection that I think this film also kind of mirrors, right? She is trying to dig into the history of Black cinema, of this particular actress, and then I think also kind of discovering her own identity in this film here, and kind of seeing it mirrored in the watermelon woman, who then she finds out her name as Faye Richardson.
Mhm.
And yeah, like she's trying to discover who this person is, and ends up finding someone she believes is also a queer woman, who is also
Mhm.
at least bisexual. But yeah, I think that is such an interesting journey. Um, and then to at the end of the film, not recontextualize it, but just to kind of reaffirm that, like,
Mm.
this is a work of fiction. Like, it is not like the watermelon is not a real person. But there's a quote, I'm gonna paraphrase it. Just like sometimes you have to make up your own history. And I found that quote fascinating. Did you have thoughts on that quote? Did that stick with you like it did with me?
I'll say that when you first read me the description of this movie, when you were pitching it to me last week, I wasn't sure how much of this was based in fact. I didn't know if the watermelon woman
Right.
was a real historical figure, or at least like very closely based on a real historical figure. So as the movie goes on, you do realize it is a work of fiction. Uh, and yeah, and then at the end there is the full disclaimer, like, this is a work of fiction. I needed to create this history for this story, and the archival the archival material that was created originally for this movie is really impressive.
It's
Like
awesome.
the
Yeah.
the old movies from the 30s and 40s, the old photographs and home videos, old home film reels and things like that. Like,
Yeah. They
I didn't
nailed it.
realize how much work really went into making this movie, in terms of research and in terms of recreating a research within the movie for a fictional subject. Like,
Yeah.
that journey the film goes on is really fascinating.
It really is. It's almost deceptive in that way, and not
Mhm.
not in like a malicious way, but yeah, like you can see the like, oh, okay, the whole movie is in 4:3, right? This was way back before like all of our movies were in widescreen. And then you have the handy cam footage, right? And it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, this really is this like homemade cheap indie film. And yeah, you don't necessarily really think about all of these like older films and photographs that they're recreating to put in this film, or this some of them might be actual real stuff that they
Yeah.
could incorporate and work around and make this fiction with here. But just the fact that there are some of these that, yeah, absolutely is just like they had to like remake this thing, and that's so cool. um they had some good stuff there, but I think that quote at the end really stood out to me, just in terms of this kind of not coming of age, but this journey of self-discovery. Like
Mhm.
we said at the start, this was the first feature film made by a black lesbian woman. And I don't know if I could name. I mean, I can't name another one anyways, but one of such historical significance. I think it to put it up there on that echelon. I don't know if I could name another one, and so as a creative, I'm wondering if Cheryl thought the same thing and was like, "Hey, where do I find the movies made by someone like me?
Mhm.
Who's documented that history of all that, and just maybe not finding it." Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, makes this work of art, this work of fiction that is like, how can I memorialize both all of the stuff we have done, the stuff that has gone unnoticed or left out of most history books, while also making something brand new, right? Um, and she came up with this, and I think it was really good.
Yeah, I do like that it, thought process of I want to tell a story that is about the importance of documenting history and legacy. But if we haven't had a problem in the past with proper documentation of history, I might have to invent a fictional person and the story is about the documentation of this fictional history. But
Yeah,
it is a lovely story, and I the tone of this movie is really unique. It's about there are so many serious angles at which you can approach this movie, but you can have like it's just a serious academic, like critical discussion of the themes and motifs in it. But it also feels just like light. It's light. It's funny. There's all these sort of non sequiturs and vignettes, and she goes on like she gets dragged on like an awkward, like blind double date with like her friend and
yeah,
her friend's girlfriend and that girlfriend's friend who came in from out of town. Like there's laughs in it. Like whatever you want to come to this movie for, it has that in it.
yeah, yeah. There's a like in the life of Faye Richardson, there is this kind of mystery and melancholy, and just kind of looming sadness that she was someone that was kind of forgotten, and the
Hmm.
people that do recognize her or know her either are so far distance, or that there was like I don't remember if it was like her sister or her cousin that she ended up interviewing, the one they went to her house and she was like not, when they
That
suggested that
was
she was a lesbian, she was like absolutely not, get out of my house.
uh Cheryl believed that Faye had a relationship with this white female
It's
director
the
who made the films,
director's
whose name
sister
was
or something,
Martha
right?
Page. Yes. And
Yeah,
yeah, and they visit Martha Page's sister, who like absolutely not. Like it has no belief that her sister, was ever interested in women.
right, yeah. And then yeah, you have the like home movie aspect where Tamra is usually the one filming all
Mhm.
of this stuff, and every once in a while you'll hear her from behind the camera just chime in and make a comment, and she's always like real sarcastic, real like, well, why are we even filming this here? Just like has no idea, like, what do you even do? What is this project? Like, why do you need to film the streets here as we're
Mhm.
driving
Mhm.
through the streets of Philly here? There's all that stuff. I will say Tamara has what I think is the funniest line in the film, the funniest interaction. It's when they go to that one guy's house that has all of the like the he has like all of this the movie posters and just any kind of documents or film strips of black cinema. He's a bit of a collector, kind of an oddball, and I think the tamest way to put it is that he is kind of overtly hitting on these two women, just like very excited that like, oh, there's women in my house, like, oh my god. um and just in the awkward person that he is, he makes a comment when they ask about this director, like, well, if you don't know the Watermelon Woman, what about Martha Page? She was a white director, she was a woman, and he kind of has like, woman, well, I'm not the greatest with women. And then Tamara chimes in, well, goes, she said something like, well, well, look at you. Of course you aren't. And
Yeah,
he just
and the way
deadpans like looks at her like, are you serious right now?
that look is so funny. And I I was
I
reading
busted
that.
out laughing so hard.
It's very funny. I thought that man might have been gay. I can't point to the specific textual thing that
Right.
indicated that to me. But I thought that's what that was. That was ironic, like her calling out as a queer person, I see you were also
like you can
a
read
queer
it both
person.
ways.
Yeah.
Because he almost does have a layer of like flamboyancy to him in some of the things he does, in some of the things he says, but it's not so overt that it's like, okay, yeah, like I can tell that you're probably a gay man here. But yeah, just like I think also in his awkwardness and some of the comments he makes towards Cheryl and Tamra, it is almost like he's hitting on them. They're almost kind of uncomfortable like in his presence. And it's just like it's I don't know exactly which way to read that or how to read that. But either way, it was just really funny that's just without skipping a beat, moment. Just like, look at you. Of course you aren't. Just so mad.
Just the look on that actor's face is incredible.
Oh my God.
Another joke I really liked is in this double date that I mentioned earlier. They go out to a karaoke bar, and it's Tamara's girlfriend's friend who they're trying to set Cheryl up with, because Tamara's like, Cheryl, you've been single for too long. You've been obsessed with this project. You got to get out there. Here's Yvette. Yvette's nice. And they talk about how there was a rumor at the school that Yvette went to that Spike Lee was going to come there and possibly audition people for a new movie. So she was trying to show off in case him or his casting directors were there. And she got up in front of the school and she sang this song. And so she gets up in front of the karaoke bar and sings, I think, loving you is easy because you're beautiful. Was that it? But there's all this lead up. Right, which is like a highlight song to begin with. But there's all this talk about how she's a terrible singer. And she gets up there and she is like, the softest, just meek little mousy voice, which is not what the standard bad at singing voice is. You're expecting her to be way too loud, way too brash, screechy, something like that. So to have this bad singing that is the most like light, delicate, meek thing was just so surprising. Yeah. Yes. I really liked that. That was a turn on that joke I can't believe I've never seen before or since.
Yeah, it definitely has some good comedy mixed in there too. I really enjoyed that stuff. I also I mean, just to go back to the like different feelings you can get. I think the like stopping people on the street and asking them like, hey, you guys know who the watermelon woman is? I will say, well, some of that didn't play for me as well. Some of it seemed a little more scripted than her just like going out on the street and like randomly asking people. I feel like some of it kind of had to be to kind of help move the plot along and not have literally everyone just be like, who? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But there is something I think that they captured in doing those segments and those bits is that almost everyone is so excited to just be on camera. Like there is this like optimism, this hope, this like oh, me? Like you want me to like hey, like hi, I'm here. You can ask me the question. This is also a weird touchstone. Melissa, have you ever seen the TV show Cash Cab?
Yes.
Never thought I would be talking about Cash Cab on the review show here. They do this thing like it's a game show. If you guys don't know, it's a trivia game show that happens in this guy's cab in New York, and they have a couple lifelines they could do if they don't know the answer to the question. One of them is to stop and ask someone on the street.
Yeah.
And when they stop and ask someone on the street, like there's often someone who's just kind of so excited to be involved, and whether they know the answer or not, they're kind of captivated by this idea that there's a game show like happening inside this cab, and so there is just this like, yeah, this weird, it's not necessarily hope or optimism, but there is this excitement and this joy that is like in there, and I think they really captured that in those scenes. There is also one scene that is kind of the flip of that, where it's these two women they ask, and they just kind of stand there, their hip out, and just look at each other like real annoyed, just like, why is she asking us? Right? Which felt like a lot like the if you guys have seen the Goofy movie, those two girls on the front of the bus who were just like,
yes,
right? It felt very 90s.
Yes.
I think even in some of the smallest details in this movie, there are things that just feel very 90s or are deceptive in how much work actually went into making them, or have all sorts of different kind of themes and layering to them that I think you can kind of easily skip over if you're not really looking at it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think even sitting here and talking about it, like I'm finding new things to be like, you know what, that scene was good. This was right. So.
Yeah, I am happy that the movie is like an 86-minute long sort of light story, because I think that makes it so digestible. Like, this is so easy for so many different people to like put into their lives. I feel like the length of it makes it accessible and like easier for me to pitch to other people. But I do wish it was longer. I wish we had a lot more detail in certain aspects. Like, there's storylines that seem to start and not end, or suddenly there are conclusions and we missed things in the middle, or there's even just little details. Like at the video store they work at, the manager's name is Bob. And when they get a new hire, he's like, train her on the Bob system. You got to show her the Bob system. And we never see that in play. And I genuinely wanted to know, what is the Bob system? What does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they do such a good job of the like video store moments having it feel like the independent, like going back to Clerks, right? They have the stuff in there that feels exactly like that, like trying to train someone on the computer and them being like, you know, I've worked at a video store before, like I know how to do all of this stuff. Just the sarcasm, the tension between the clerks working there, even the like awkward situations of like what videos they are renting, or now we know that there is a scam that they are running. They will rent things off their customer's name without them knowing, and it's a way for them to get the free movies, and they end up like renting a porn on Diana's account, and then like she ends up walking up as they are discussing it, and they're just like, I'm sorry, man, but we don't have like big black something, and he's like, but we do have
bald
big
black ball posters.
Right? But he's like, but we do have like big black bald Bob if you want to check that one out. It's like, this is no, oh my god. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because something else that I and my partner who watched this with me really felt like pretty much right away in this film is there are especially certain moments, but there are things in this film that felt years ahead of its time. Um, I don't know, like there's certain sitcoms or TV shows. I
Hmm.
don't know if I'd really call them sitcoms, but when I mentioned to my partner that the same woman who was starring in and also was the one that wrote it and directed, she said, "Oh, like something Issa Rae would do,"
Ah,
and I was like, "Yeah, you're not wrong." And that was also like at the scene where they first go to the library and they're trying to find stuff and they're kind of in the like the dungeons of the library
yeah.
there, right? Um, and some of the conversations they were having did feel very natural. I think them
Hmm.
just the plot of them going to the library to try and find information on this person, and they can't really find much, and so they go to the clerk who's really not helpful. Like it felt like something you might see in a sitcom uh today.
Hmm.
I don't know why my mind went to it, but my mind went to something like Broad City, not
Yeah.
in the like comedic aspect, but just the idea that here are two friends living their life. They get up to all sorts of stuff, but when they need help with a project, they always go to their best friend, and they go on a mission together, right? They need to find info on the watermelon woman. And it just felt like something you would see in that or in the show Atlanta, right? You might see
Hmm.
something like, hey, we need to find out like some info on this one creator or this one artist who knows what. Feels it felt very modern. And I could, to be honest, kind of see this as a TV show, as like
Yeah.
not necessarily them always focusing on the watermelon woman, but a TV show about them working at this like 90s video store. I know they just did that like blockbuster show that apparently didn't do super well. Um, but I could see a TV show based on these characters and it would work in a modern day sense, and I really enjoyed that. Um is that a vibe you got at all? Like what were some of the vibes you were getting off of this? Could this work in a modern day sense? Did you feel that like that joy and excitement from people being on camera? What stood out
Yeah.
to you in all of that?
This I was thinking about how, since this is such a research focused movie, not like the production of the movie, but literally what the main character in the story is doing, to
Mhm.
have it set in 1996, like there are such limited internet resources. Like there's a computer at the video store that seems like it's just for logging in customer orders. Like
Mhm.
technology doesn't come up very much. I was 6. I don't super remember what the average person's access to technology was like. And even if they could get on a computer, what was internet searching like? What sort of research was out there for you to get if you weren't like
Right.
a grad student who had university connections and like knew how to conduct internet research? I don't know, but it is so sort of lo-fi and analog. Like it's a lot of library books. It's double checking like what's in the reference library I have to look at while I'm actually at the library. What are in the other stacks that I can check out and take home?
Mhm.
Can I just ask people? Can I call my mom? Does she remember seeing this woman in any movies when she was younger? You know, reaching out to like friends and family. Like it's the sort of connective web of doing the legwork of just asking friends of friends is really specific to this time. I did
Yeah.
think about how even if this movie was made like 3 or 4 years later, it would look different.
Mhm.
And if it was
I
made
agree.
today,
I think the
it
internet would also be a little more pervasive, like in the film, or would permeate the
mm,
film a little bit more, like you were
yeah,
saying. Yeah.
yeah, and then we would also introduce like internet dating into this also. Like it would add new layers to everything that's going on with these characters. Uh, they did, if the story took place in modern times, I don't know if it would be as personal of a journey for Cheryl, because if she really wanted to learn about the watermelon woman, you can see her like taking to the internet,
Mhm.
making a Twitter hashtag, making a Discord server or something
Right,
like
yeah.
that. And then suddenly she would draw a community. Like people would be there to support her, to help her. It would be an easier journey, but it would not narratively serve the same purpose that it does in this movie, where it really is her on her own out there. And she's got people who are helping her, but Tamara isn't always into what she's doing. When she talks to these people in these interviews, you only see everybody once.
Mhm.
Like there are no recurring interviews. There are no recurring characters in her research sphere who she keeps coming back to.
Yeah.
And that would feel
Um,
very different if they did it today. And I
I
kind of like the very personal crusade that is in this movie of like, I have to
yeah.
find her. Nobody else will find her. I have to go to the library and get 20 books. I have to call 20 people on the phone.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. And I think some of the comedy in the way like the clerk at the library reacts to them, as well as the situation happening at the CLIT, the Center for Lesbian Information and Technology, which is a
I
great
love
name.
that.
That's awesome. I hope that's a
That's
real thing.
I don't know if it is. I'm not going to Google the clit.
And and the irony of me saying I hope that's a real thing for the clit is not lost on me.
That's the tone that this movie operates in. Like it is tackling these serious issues of like there is missing queer history, there is missing black history. There's people who have been like overlooked and marginalized, and what are we doing to make amends for that and make progress for the future? But yeah, the organization who is working on this is a funny, horny acronym name.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's great. But like the way those characters in charge of those institutions are acting, I feel like is almost a reflection of just like how finding
Hmm.
information would go, or how finding information on those particular topics would go too. Like there was when she's at the clit, like the clerk there is just dumping things out on the table, and she's just like, whoa, what are you doing? Like these are like historical documents and things. Like you don't treat it with that kind of disrespect. um
Hmm.
and I don't think that's necessarily just a bit for like comedy's sake, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
wondering if that is a reflection on like if I was to actually go try and find documentation on black lesbians in Hollywood, all that stuff, like how much of that was treated with respect that it has been preserved. um
Hmm.
so I find all of that stuff fascinating and interesting.
There's also
So,
an odd joke there at the clit where she's asking the researcher at that organization, I'm looking for information about Faye Richards, aka the watermelon woman. Do you have any information about her? Is she perhaps in like the black library of your organization? And that woman says something about how they received an endowment from like some certain group. They received certain funding to create like black lesbian history archives, but it's specifically for a black audience. So if they find white people in the photos, they have to cross them out.
so weird.
Right. And then by definition of having the funding from this organization that stipulates this is a black only archive, then it is segregated from like the other archives of other people. I,
They
there's a lot in,
went very close to having a
mm,
separate but equal
mm,
joke in there, and I was worried
mm,
they were
mm.
gonna do it because there was like she asked something about the archive, and she goes, "No, it's separate." and then just kind of stops and leaves that hanging. And I was just like, okay, good. They didn't do it. But yeah.
One thing that did slightly bug me is that there's some touch on the connection between the sort of stereotypical tie between Black people and watermelon, but we don't learn specifically why in her movies Faye Richards was ever credited as the watermelon woman. Like, why her out of
That's
perhaps
true.
any other Black performers at that
Yeah.
time? Like, in the archival footage, in the discussions of these fictional movies, like Plantation Memories that Cheryl is watching, the watermelons are not seen or discussed. We also don't see any actual credits of this movie. Like, we don't see like a title card, Plantation Memories featuring this person, and
Right.
the watermelon woman. Like, there's no, for it being the title of the movie and the key mystery, I wanted to learn more about, like, how did that credit arise? Who called her that? Who's the person to write that down in the title cards at the studio? I really wanted more information about that. And
Yeah.
and certainly not to downplay the missing the Black performer and crew member credits at that time. But when you watch old movies, there are so many names missing. It's like, here's the director, the main actors, no little supporting players who have like 2 lines. We credit only like the department head. So it's like, this person designed the costumes. End of credits. No, we're not going to tell you individual seamstresses, etc. Like, there is across the board, again, not to downplay like specific like racial prejudice, but like, so much in old movies is missing, and that is truly boggling. And I did like that the story was about addressing that and trying to figure out, decades later, if I find some small performer who I really like in an old movie, how do I learn about them?
Yeah.
What are my resources?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to point out. I feel like it kind of goes without saying the inherent racism of the nickname. But yeah, like I wonder if there's more layers to that. I mean, even this is maybe a stretch, but like the act of eating a watermelon might be similar to something else.
Sure.
Could hint at her being a lesbian. I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly. And I, on one hand, yeah, it bothers me because I want to know more. What was that story? How did she
Yes.
get that nickname? I feel like that's kind of the premise of the film. But also, I like the remaining mystery. Like, she did not end up focusing on the racism surrounding her life, or, well, I mean, she did, but not in the way that, like, this is how you got the nickname. She ended up focusing on her life of like, okay, so you got into Hollywood, and like, what else did you do? Oh, you had a relationship with this director, and that led you to like these clubs, and then you started to go to these jazz clubs and sing and do all of this stuff. Like, she ended up following the life and accomplishments of her rather than like the derogatory nicknames and racism that stuck with her. And I kind of like that and appreciate that too. So
it's like, I want to know who the watermelon woman is. I don't need to know why she was the watermelon woman.
Potentially,
that is more the question. Yes.
So yeah, I think we're on a little bit of a time crunch here, aren't we?
Slightly. It is Father's Day. My mom is supposed to come pick me up for Father's Day activities. We had some technical issues and we started recording a little late today.
Yeah. So I say we kind of wrap things up right there. And then we can do our bingo check-in real quick here. Let me pull this up on screen. We like to play bingo with all sorts of different like movie and entertainment tropes. all that good stuff. As the year
Mhm.
continues, it gets harder and harder to fill out some of these squares. So this might be a quick one here.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we have any kind of like diary entry.
No.
No one was really arted to death. There's no cat and mouse game here. The sex scene in this was not set to music in the way that I imagine. I go back to that scene in Watchmen, where
Yes.
they
Where it's
right.
where like the sexual acts are like tied to like the tempo and the progression of the song. When the song
Yeah.
hits a crescendo, you climax, etc.
Exactly.
But I
So
do want to say,
I don't think I
just my
have
last
anything.
couple. Well, you look at that. My last couple bits about the watermelon woman.
Sure.
I liked the cutaways to just like Cheryl and her friends dancing, the sort of
Yes.
plotless moments of just levity and just socialization among these characters. I really liked. I like her
Showing their joy.
flirtation with. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of happy moments in here. You know, even when the characters are struggling, it doesn't feel like it weighs the movie down that much. Her flirtation with Diana is fun to watch. That's
Mhm.
compelling. You do get a very sincere sex scene. I always have difficulty
Yeah.
describing sex scenes. I feel like it's way too perverse of a statement to say that was a compelling sex scene, but I don't know
Yeah.
how else to describe it.
Well, it's also not your typical sex scene in the sense like it's a man and a woman and it lasts for like 30 seconds and then they just
Right, it's long.
fall over. It is a little bit longer. It seems to be more focused on foreplay, which is typically
Yeah.
not what happens in Hollywood sex scenes. They just get right to it, going in dry, and then it's over in 30 seconds, and you're just like, that's not how it works. But yeah, like I like that. You're right. There is a sincerity to that. There is
Mhm.
a realism to it that I think is really nice.
Mm.
So yeah, good stuff with that. Um, I don't think we had much of an update on Bingo. Do you want to get straight
No.
into recommendations? If people enjoy this, what else might they like?
Ah, yeah. We
I have a
we
few
did.
ready
Yeah,
to
go
go if you
for
want me
it.
to go.
Yeah.
So one that I wanted to recommend is a comic book. It's a graphic novel.
Ah.
I've recommended this once or twice before for a number of different reasons. This is a graphic novel by Ram V and Anand RK, I believe is the artist on this book. But it's called Blue and Green, and
Mm.
it's just a standalone graphic novel. You can read this. I picked this up because I've been really enjoying Ram V's work as of late. He's making some fantastic stuff. But this is kind of a horror story
Oh.
about a guy that is haunted by the pursuit of creative genius. If that makes sense, like the high level stuff. The official description says a dark and haunting portrayal of a young musician's pursuit of creative genius, the monstrous nature of which threatens to consume him as it did his predecessor half a century ago. And so yeah, I think he is a musician that's back in town for, I don't remember if it was a death in the family or a death of his like mentor, his like musical mentor. And he's in town for that, and gets haunted by this one record, trying to find this one particular like jazz musician that was active in the 60s. And so he is on
Yeah.
this search to kind of find him and research him. And he's going to all of these clubs in New York, being like, hey, do you know who this guy was? Do you remember him performing here? I think he had, like, I have this one picture of him and it's at this club. Do you remember who he was? And there's a similar kind of trying to research this artist that is hard to track down, hard to nail down. And while the Watermelon Woman is maybe a little more successful and like we said, joyous and exciting in that way, this is a much darker take on that, and it has this haunting nature to it. But I really liked that book. I would recommend that for sure.
Nice. I forgot the title, but I think you have told me about that before. That sounds
Blue
cool.
and Green. Blue and Green.
Okay.
It's a reference to all of those like Blue Note jazz records and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. And then another one that we covered earlier this year. Let me see if I can look up what episode we did this on. Oh God, why am I now blanking on the name when I need to look it up? Let me go back
and look at it.
No, I was not going to say The Handmaiden. I was going to say Angeline.
Oh yeah.
Angeline is a fascinating show that came out on Peacock within the past year or so. Just 5 episodes, a limited series focusing on the real life person Angeline, but this whole series is kind of it's hard to say fictionalization. It is partly a fictionalization, partly based on fact and stuff like that. It is a look at this woman's life. It's kind of part documentary, part like recreations. It's very meta, and as you learn more about the character, you kind of start to question some of the things that have been told to you in the series and in the document. I don't know why I keep saying that word weird today on the podcast. The documentary sequences, you start to learn that she is very much a person that wants to be in control of her own narrative. And so some of the things that you see maybe aren't as true as they were presented. But yeah, it has that mix of like, here's stuff that's happening in real life. Here's stuff that it is a documentary, but wait, maybe it wasn't like that. So maybe let's go back and change things. It's just an interesting look at a person, a celebrity who was in this case, like after fame and recognition, and just the story that their life went through, the ups and downs, the potential sadness and loneliness, as well as the successes that happened around her. I think is an interesting way to look at that. I think you might enjoy that one.
Yeah. Angeline is fascinating. I think if you were into the research into a mysterious entertainment figure, Angeline is a good story to go to for that.
Yeah, we covered that here on the review show on episode 246. So if you want to go back, we covered that earlier this year. So yeah.
I just wanted to briefly mention another piece of the Black film history I was lucky enough to see in the past year. I've got older parents. They watch a lot of TCM, and that exposes me to a lot of older movies I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention Stormy Weather. This is a 1943 American musical film. The film is starring Lena Horne, Bilbo Jangles Robinson, and Cab Calloway. The film is one of 2 Hollywood musicals with an African-American cast released in 1943. It is a primary showcase of some of the leading African-American performers of the day during an era when African-American actors and singers rarely appeared in lead roles in mainstream Hollywood productions. And it's from Wikipedia. It's cool. Just a big, fun musical with an all-black cast. And I wasn't aware specifically of these films existing at that time. And just a nice look into a history I wasn't super aware of. And it was both fun just in terms of the bombastic song and dance numbers. There's all sorts of styles and moods going on here. There's sad ballads. There's these big tap dancing numbers. Just nice to learn about. I appreciated the time I spent watching stormy weather on TCM.
That's cool. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of all the recommendations I have right now. So go check those out. We hope you enjoyed The Watermelon Woman as well. But yeah, Melissa, next week, what are we up to here on the podcast?
Next week, we are continuing our ongoing monthly series. We talk about something new every week here on the Whatnauts review show, except for the last weekend of every month. As we record it, we follow one story all the way through to its conclusion. So last month, we talked about season 2 of The Good Place. And this month, we are continuing on with season 3. That is what next week's episode is going to be. But I do have pitches for what we are going to discuss 2 weeks from now.
Perfect.
This will be the first weekend of July. And last year, you and I had the realization we've never talked about Nicolas Cage. Why have we missed Nicolas Cage? And last year, for the 4th of July weekend, I'm like, Kyle, there is only one choice. I decree it. We're watching National Treasure and National Treasure 2, Book of Secrets. And we are making this a new tradition. First week of July, Nicolas Cage is here.
Yep.
And so I have 3 Nicolas Cage movies for you.
Get ready for a cage match.
My theme this year is the familiar Cage. Nicolas Cage movies featuring themes and motifs that echo popular review show topics you and I have covered in the past.
Okay, cool.
Pitch number 1. We watched all the Fast and Furious movies earlier this year, so it seemed only right to pitch Drive Angry.
Interesting. There you go.
This is a 2011 movie. Thrown into hell for his crimes, brutal felon John Milton escapes from the fiery pit after cultists murder his daughter and take her baby. Intent on rescuing the child, Milton joins forces with a waitress who gives him her ex-lover's fire-red muscle car. In it, the two pursue the cult leader who plans to sacrifice the infant and unleash hell on Earth. However, the hunters become the hunted when Satan sends his merciless henchmen to drag Milton back to hell.
Interesting. I've never heard of this one.
I heard about it on an episode of How Did This Get Made once years ago.
Oh, man.
Pitch number 2. We are fans of time travel stories here on the review show.
Yes.
We've talked about all of Dark, for instance. One time we watched Primer, many others. So pitch number 2 is the 1986 movie Peggy Sue Got Married. Peggy Sue Bodell attends her 25-year high school reunion after separating from her cheating husband, Charlie, the Nicolas Cage. She regrets the decisions she's made in her life, such as getting pregnant by Charlie in high school. When she faints at the reunion, she awakens in 1960. Given the chance to relive her life, she changes many things. However, some choices are more complicated as she begins to see young Charlie's charm and true feelings. Sort of an atypical take, not a sci-fi take on time travel, but more
like a It's a Wonderful Life take on time travel.
Right.
Yeah.
Sort of if you in your own mind, soul, and timeline went back into your past, what are you changing for yourself?
I gotcha. Okay. Interesting. I Google searched this because this is also one I don't have Nick Cage's filmography committed to memory. But
he doesn't either. I don't think so.
But there's like you're 2 for 2 on naming ones I've never heard of. So because I also have a story. I don't know if it's much of a story. There was one time I was on an airplane and I was watching someone else watching a movie, and Nick Cage was in that movie, but I've never been able to figure out what movie they were watching. And so you like our now Nick Cage tradition is also like my journey to find this movie.
Every year you get to cross one movie off of the list of what it could be.
Exactly. And for a second here, I was like, this might be the one. This might be it, but I don't know now. But
And
yeah,
this is a pretty young Cage. This is one of his
interesting.
earliest roles, I think.
Yeah.
And pitch number 3. One thing we have loved in the past on the review show is double casting. Actors in multiple roles, actors
man.
playing against themselves. We're big fans of Fringe. One of my favorite review show memories is Tilda Swinton's dual role in Suspiria blowing your mind.
That was great. I had no idea. I watched the whole thing, didn't know, came on the podcast, and you let me know. Mind blown. It was great.
So pitch number 3 is the 2002 movie Adaptation. Nicolas Cage is Charlie Kaufman, a confused LA screenwriter overwhelmed by feelings of inadequacy, sexual frustration, self-loathing, and by the screenwriting ambitions of his freeloading twin brother Donald, also Nicolas Cage. Cage plays both men in a set of twins. While struggling to adapt The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean, Kaufman's life spins from pathetic to bizarre. The lives of Kaufman, Orlean's book, become strangely intertwined as one search for passion collides with the others. This movie, I've never seen any of these movies, but this one has been on my to-watch list for 20 years now. I saw like Ebert and Roper at the movies talking about adaptation. I was fascinated by it. I've never gotten around to watching it. I think since we started this show, I've had it in my back pocket as one of these days I'm going to pitch Kyle Adaptation. I really want to watch this. And you may recognize the name Charlie Kaufman from films such as Being John Malkovich. I'm thinking of Ending Things, infamously bizarre films. So that's what we are in for here.
I have to say, I'm thinking of Ending Things. That movie was truly bizarre in like a way that speaks to me as an art kid. Incredible. These are great ones.
To recap, yes, pitch number 1, Drive Angry. That one is on Max. Pitch number 2, Peggy Sue Got Married. And number 3, Adaptation. Those two I did not immediately find streaming. They are, a $4 rental somewhere, or we've got 2 weeks until we have to talk about it. Check out your local library.
Exactly. Man, these are great. But in honor of our very own national treasure, Nicolas Cage, I think we have to go with the most Cage. And do adaptation.
Yes, 2 Cages.
Yes, please. Why not? I think this sounds amazing.
Also, upon Googling this movie,
himself is great.
Tilda Swinton is in this movie. I believe she may only be the one Tilda Swinton, but she's in it.
The Tilda single. Good stuff. Yeah, I say we watch Adaptation in 2 weeks' time.
Adaptation,
not adaption. Adaptation. Good stuff. So yeah, once again, just a reminder: next week, season 3 of The Good Place is what we will be checking out. So go continue watching that show and come back next week to hear us talk about it. That's about it for today's podcast. So, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can listen to my, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit, WILKYWIT. You can listen to my other podcast. I've done a show with my brother Jams called Saturday Morning Obscurities, a show about weird old kid shows you feel like only you remember. We haven't been active in a couple months. We've both been busy, but we've got a good amount of back episodes you can listen to. And last year, we did do a pair of Pride episodes, including my pick was a couple episodes of the anime Revolutionary Girl Utena, which is about a girl who aspires to be a prince, and she does a heroic act and is then given a bride in exchange. And she's like, "Oh, hold on, I just want to do princely things. What do you mean I have to marry this lady?" It's interesting queer story, and just weird in general. What a surreal story. What odd vibes.
A great one. It is kind of the and it always feels weird to say female centric equivalent of like Neon Genesis Evangelion. They go hand in hand. It's a good 1-2 punch. Or well, if you want more of the like existentialism that is Neon Genesis Evangelion, that it goes hand in hand there. But yeah, you guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on Twitter. And if you would like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. If you are watching this on YouTube, we have a few more videos right over there. I might go put the Angeline one up there since that was a recent one and one we recommended. Go check that out. But yeah, thanks for watching us this week. We will see you later. Bye.
Bye.